Good day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's economics lesson. My name is Leah Mofokeng. This lesson is brought to you by Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Saibono Discovery Center and broadcasted by Phakama Research and Development. In the studio today, I am with Ms. Duduzile Vedboy, who will be co-presenting with me. So what is going to happen is that while I'm presenting, she will be busy answering your WhatsApp questions. So remember to send WhatsApp questions relating to today's presentation. The WhatsApp number is 064 748 8913. We'll be dealing with the topic of national aggregate, and this topic was taught in grade 10, 11, and it will continue in grade 12 this year. So here Good day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's economics lesson. My name is Leah Mofokeng. This lesson is brought to you by Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Saibono Discovery Center and broadcasted by Phakama Research and Development. With me in the studio, I am with Ms. Duduzile Vedboy, who will be co-presenting with me. She will be answering your WhatsApp messages where you'll be sending us questions to this number 064 748 8913, and later she will be teaching. So I want to apologize on behalf of Phakama Research and Development. There was a technical error. That is why we had to restart. So like I've mentioned that today we are dealing with the topic of national aggregate. This topic did not start only in grade 10. It started in grade it hasn't started in grade 12. It started in grade 10 and is progressing to 11, and it's also going to be taught now in grade 12. So let's look at what you're supposed to learn. So let me take you back to grade 10. In grade 10, focus on the text that is highlighted in red. In grade 10, you were taught how to derive GDP and how to derive GNI. So you were also taught how to define it and how to eliminate it through their importance. So you learned how to do the definition, the composition, the importance, and the comparison in grade 10. In grade 11, that's where your national aggregates, the calculations were done using the three methods, which is the production method, the income method, and the expenditure method. Now in grade 12, we're still continuing with the same three methods of calculating national income and also how to convert GDP into GNP. Then later, in the next lesson, you will be taught about the multiplier, how to draw the graphs, how to interpret it, and how to answer questions relating to it. So yesterday, in the previous lesson that we had, we looked at the secular flow model. So as we were looking at the secular flow model, we looked at the diagram itself of an open economy, which include the foreign sector. Then we also look at the interactions between the participants in this model. We looked at the different types of markets which are found in the secular flow model. And we also look at the flows of income and the flows of factors of production, public goods, and also goods exported and goods imported. So today we're looking at how an essay which is related to the secular flow can be asked and how you should respond to it. So as Ma'am Bedboy took you through how to answer short questions, how to answer paragraph questions of middle order and higher order. So today we starting at looking at the essay, giving you the tips and the hints on how to answer an essay type question. So in economics, essay types questions are two-folded. What do I mean when I say essay type questions are two-folded? Is that you will find two questions in one. We have the main question out of 26 marks and the additional question out of 10 marks. Like it's appearing here. The main part, this is the main part of the question. So the main part says, discuss in detail the markets in the four-sector model in the secular flow. The marks is 26 marks. And then the additional question, says, evaluate the role of the businesses in growing the economy for 10 marks. So if you add these marks, it will give you how many marks? 36 marks. But here it's written that the total for this essay is 40 marks. So we need to find where does the 4 marks comes from. So we have what we call IMAC. What is IMAC? When you answer an essay, you need to have an introduction. The I stand for introduction, and the introduction will carry 2 marks. And then the M stand for main part, meaning that you'll be responding to this first question. It will carry 26 marks. Then the A stand for additional part. It stands for additional part. And this additional part carries 10 marks. That's when you'll be responding to the second question. So C stands for conclusion. So your conclusion will be how many marks? It will be 2 marks. All in all, when you add, the total for this essay will be 40 marks. So the tip, remember I mentioned that my role today for this particular essay is to guide you so that you can get more marks if you are exposed with this type of a question where you have to answer an essay. So my tip for you today is that try by all means, when you're studying and preparing for essay type questions, you can use mind maps. With mind maps, that is will help you to remember all the headings that are related to the particular essay. And I want to tell you that by doing that, you will get 8 marks. If you get less than 8 marks, then we will award you marks, or your teacher will award you marks for adding examples and other subheadings. Let us look at this example. So because the essay was for you to discuss the role of markets, so you can brainstorm using mind maps. You are planning. Yesterday or during the previous lesson, when we were dealing with markets, we mentioned that in a circular flow model, we have a factor market. We also have a good market. We also have a financial market, which is divided into two, into money market and capital market. We also have foreign exchange. So what I've mentioned is that when you attend to the main part of the essay or the main part of the essay, it is for 26 marks, yes, but you will be given or awarded 8 marks. For what? For headings. This is for headings, this is for subheadings, and this will be for what? It will be for examples. So by looking at this mind map, already let's count the ticks. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 marks. Then it means you short of 2 marks for you to get this 8. So meaning that will be compensated with what? Examples. So this you can do it on a piece of paper as part of your rough work. Let's look at the introduction. There's one thing that I want to tell you about the introduction when you write your economics essay. Your introduction should be of a lower order. What do I mean? I mean that it shouldn't be a complicated introduction. So in economics, we don't write an essay like in other subjects whereby you'll be saying, in this essay, I'm going to discuss factor market, goods market, financial market, foreign exchange market. You will lose marks. You will only be awarded 2 marks for that. But in the main part, you won't be allocated marks for mentioning those markets because it will be regarded as a repetition of facts. So rather look at the question and define the concept in the question. So in this example, you're supposed to discuss the role of markets in the circular flow. So what you can do, you can define for us what a market is: a place where buyers and sellers meet to exchange goods and services at a certain price. You'll be given your 2 marks. You can even define the term circular flow. You can mention that it shows a flow of money, income, expenditure, and production between the participants, and you stop there. You'll be given your 2 marks. But the moment you mention the markets, the factor markets, the foreign exchange markets, you will lose money. You lose marks in the body. Okay, so here we also have examples, other examples apart from what I've mentioned. The economy of a country is regarded as an open economy because of the presence of the household, producers, government, and the foreign sector, as well as the financial sector, as active participants in the economy. By just mentioning this, you will get a simple 2 marks. Or you will mention that markets link the participants in the economy. You will be awarded, the maximum is 2 marks. Okay, let's move to the main part of the body. Product market, you mention it, or you write good market or output market, you'll be allocated that 1 mark that I mentioned, that for the headings, subheadings, and examples, you will be awarded 8 marks. So we will give you 1 mark here. So let us look at the other facts. So if you mention that at the product markets, that is where consumer goods and services are sold. it's fine. You will be awarded 2 marks. Make sure that everything that you write in bullet or point forms and it's in full sentences. Then you'll get your 2 marks. You can also mention that goods are defined. You can define what is a good. Goods are defined as tangible items such as food, clothes, cars that satisfy human wants or need. For mentioning that is another 2 marks. But if you just say examples of consumer goods are food, clothes, cars, we will only give you 1 mark for the examples. We won't give you 1 mark for food, 1 mark for clothes, 1 mark for cars. We will give you only 1 mark for showing us that you know the examples of consumer goods. But point number 2, this one, it qualifies for 2 marks because the sentence is a full sentence. So you can also mention that at this particular market, that is where the buying and selling, this is important, that is where the buying and selling of goods are produced in the market. You can also mention that that is where capital goods are sold. This is a market for trading of buildings and machinery, equipment, raw materials, etc. You can also mention that consumer goods, this is a market for trading of durable goods. You can mention that, yes, they are selling consumer goods, but they are selling durable ones. Durable can be what? It can be cars. You will be given an example for giving us an example. Then you can also mention that they are selling what? Semi-durable, which can be what? For example, it can be clothing. They are also selling non-durable consumer goods which do not last for a longer period of time. You learned this in grade 10. This can be what? It can be food. So if you provide examples, you qualify for 1 mark. So make sure that when you explain, you elaborate and provide us with what? With examples when you write essays. Again, remember at the product market, they are selling also goods and services. You need to also talk to services. So what are services? Services are defined as non-tangible actions and include what? Include wholesale and retail, transport and financial market. So you will be awarded 2 marks for that. Let's move to the factor market. You can call it a factor market or resource market or an input market. So mention that this is where households are selling what? Factors of production. And these factors of production, they earn an income. Rent for natural resources, wages for labor, and capital will get an interest, and then that is profit for entrepreneurship. Mention that at this particular market, because they are selling factors of production, this also includes labor. We have labor market. We also have property market. Remember, we have natural resource. Natural resources, property can be built on the land. Okay, and we also have financial market, because remember, entrepreneurs can use either own capital for the business or borrowed capital. That is why don't be surprised to see the financial market. That is where entrepreneurs will buy, they will get borrowed capital in the form of loan. Hence, it is part of the factor market. It's the market where services of production are traded, e.g. labor is hired and also capital is borrowed. This is what I have mentioned. At the labor market, that is where labor is hired. So these services earn wages, interest, rent, and profit, like I've mentioned. Let us look at the financial market. For just mentioning financial market, you qualify for 1 mark. You should mention what is exactly happening in this market. You will mention that they are not directly involved in production, but they act as a link between households, the business sector, and other participants with surplus funds. We know that businesses need money to operate. So that is where they will get money. They will borrow from financial sector. We know that there are households whom, before they can buy something, they need to borrow money. So that is why we're saying that the financial market is a link between household and the businesses. And it can also be a link between the government, even foreign sector. We know that government can borrow money from financial markets. So the market, in this market, that is where, remember, in the previous lesson, I mentioned that we have a money market and capital market. So it offers short-term financial asset and the long-term financial asset. So you need to know that short-term will refer to money market, long-term will refer to capital market. So the financial market consists of capital market and money market. You will get a mark for that. Provide us with an example. In the financial market, that is where we find banks, insurance companies, and pension funds. Can you see that there is only one tick? We don't give one tick for banks, one tick for an example of insurance company, one tick for pension funds. No, it's only one tick for providing us examples for this particular market. Then let's look at the money market. Remember, I said the 8 marks is for subheadings and headings. So money market is a subheading for financial market. Capital market is a subheading for financial market. So you will get marks for mentioning money market. So that is where we get short-term loans and very short-term funds are saved and borrowed by consumers and businesses. 2 marks, it qualifies for 2 marks. So the products sold in the market are bank debentures, treasury bills, and government bonds. But if you just said, e.g., bank debentures, if you wrote it just like this, if it wasn't in a full sentence, we'll just give you 1 tick. So try by all means to write in full sentence so that you qualify for 2 ticks. The simplest form exists when parties make demand and short-term deposit and borrow on short-term. So you can deposit money for a short-term, you can even borrow money for a short-term in this particular market. In the previous lesson, it was alluded that the South African Reserve Bank is the key institution in the money market. You'll get your 2 marks for that. Let's look at the capital market. You have your 1 mark here. Then you should mention what is happening in this market. In the capital markets, long-term funds are borrowed and saved by consumers in the business sector. What is the key institution here? It is the Johannesburg Security Exchange, another 2 mark. What products are sold here? Mortgage, bonds, and shares. But if you just wrote e.g. shares, you will get 1 mark. So we're trying here to show you how you can accumulate more marks if you write in a full sentence. Remember that rule. Foreign exchange market is a heading, 1 mark. It deserves 1 mark. On the foreign exchange market, businesses buy or sell foreign currencies to pay for imported goods. 2 marks for that. This transaction occurs in the banks and consists of electronic money transfer from one account to another. So this is that type of market whereby you don't have to meet, the buyer and seller don't have to meet. It can even happen electronically. So it can also take place at the banks. We have leading centers or foreign exchange markets which are leading in the world. We have the London, we have New York, we have Tokyo foreign exchange markets. 2 marks because still it's in a full sentence. But if you just said e.g. Tokyo foreign exchange market, will give you only 1. For example, at this market, you could also get traveler's checks to travel abroad. You can also add flows. I know that the question said discuss the role of markets. You can also add flows which are found in this market. Let me show you an example. There's a flow of private and public goods and services which are real flows, and they are accompanied by counter flows of expenditure taxes on the product market. So we know that when goods and services are sold, there is also tax that should be paid. So goods and services is a real flow, but taxes, expenditure on taxes is what? Money flow. Factor services are real flows and they are accompanied by counter flows of income on the factor market, which are money flows. I mentioned that. Imports and exports are real flows and are accompanied by counter flows of expenditure and revenue on the foreign exchange market. Remember, when we buy imported goods, that is an expenditure we need to pay. And then when we sell exported goods, we receive what? Revenue. These are the flows. So let us quickly look at the additional part before we move to the national account aggregates. So the additional part is of a higher cognitive level. That is where you need to apply your critical knowledge. You apply what you learned. The question said, evaluate the contribution or the role of firms in growing the economy, in making sure that the economy is growing. So when you see the word evaluate, you can either give us the positive role of the firms, or you can give us the negative role which the firms are playing in the economy. So there's no limit. You can give us, because it's 10 marks, you can give us 5 positives or 5 negatives, or you can give us either 3 positives or 2 negatives. It doesn't matter. There's no rule when it comes to that. Let us first look at the positive role. With the positive role is that we know that the firms or the businesses or the private sector create job opportunities for their households. They even buy factors of production at a factor market. So they employ different factors of production, which involves even employing the workers. That is positive. Let us look at it further. If they are employing workers, they buying labor from the factor market, it simply means that they will have to pay wages and salaries to the labor that they have hired. That means national income will increase because of the wages and salaries. So these employees will have money to spend on goods and services. And spending, make no mistake, spending is good for the economy. Another positive fact, they also develop new products and services. Firms can be creative. They can create new products so that our needs are satisfied, our preferences and tastes are satisfied. For example, in response to increased demand for coffee, firms have opened new stores to cater for the new demand. 2 marks for that. They can also involve offering new services such as home delivery by supermarkets. That's also positive for the economy. But because this example is in a full sentence, it will qualify for 2 marks. Another positive, firms invest in capital and new technology to improve productivity in the economy. When they invest in capital and new technology, that is real investment. Investment is an injection in the economy. When they improve productivity, this ultimately will mean that economic growth rate will raise. And then if it improves higher living standard, it means that there will be economic development. So it starts with economic growth and then economic development will follow. Firms provide goods and services for consumers which have enabled greater specialization in the economy. So let's look at the negatives. Okay, I said there's no limit to how many positives you can give us. Let us look at the negative role. The negative role that businesses are playing is that they can cause negative externalities. They can cause what? Pollution, air pollution, water pollution, noise pollution, etc. And this can also lead to loss of natural resources, loss of even biodiversity. That is negative, qualifies for 2 marks. And then firms with monopoly power, where there is only one supplier, can charge excessive prices and cause inefficient allocation of resources. That is also negative. Firms which are publicly owned and supplying essential services may struggle to increase profits, which can lead to regular bailouts from the state. Businesses like what? South African Broadcasting Services, SABC, like South African Airways, like Eskom, they are providing essential services, but they are currently struggling to make what? Profit. As a result, they rely on the government for bailouts which could have been used for something else. So they are now used to make sure that these companies keep on operating. That is also negative to the economy. Let us look at the conclusion. That is how you will earn your 10 marks. Don't limit yourself to the textbook. You need to think outside the box when answering the additional part of the essay. So let us look at the conclusion. The conclusion should be of a higher order. I want to emphasize this. I mentioned that your introduction can be of a lower order, but the conclusion should be of a higher order. If it's not of a higher order, it's too simple. You won't be allocated full marks, or you will not be allocated, you won't be awarded even marks. So let us look at this example. The circular flow ensures continued interdependence and coordination of the economic activities in the economy. That qualifies for 2 marks. Or you can mention that markets are a critically important institution in our economic system because they regulate supply and demand, and they safeguard stable prices and confidence amongst business people. So let me give you a final tip when it comes to conclusion. Do not write that as your conclusion. Refrain from writing that in this conclusion. I have discussed the factor market, I have discussed the product market, I have discussed the financial market. You won't get marks because that information already was included where? In the main part of the essay. So you rather write a full statement which was not included in the main part and additional part, but which is relevant to the essay. Or you rather give your own opinion. What is your own opinion with regard to the roles of firms in growing the economy, or your own opinion with regard to the role of markets in an open economy. So do not repeat facts which were written in the body. So this will qualify for 2 marks. So let us take a 5-minute break, and then we will welcome Ms. Duduzile Vedboy, who will take you through the national account aggregates, the theory and the calculations.
I want to remove this quickly. Do you guys have?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Am I
Okay.
fine?
Are you
Yes,
feeling
I
comfortable, or do you want to go forward a little bit?
am. Yeah, maybe
Are
a
you
little
okay?
bit. Maybe just a little bit forward.
Are you
Thank
gonna fit?
you. Nah, I won't.
You know what to do. You know what I normally do.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you can sit. I'll show
Okay.
what I normally do.
Can you please just move it a bit? I'll fix the tablecloth afterwards. Okay.
I know.
A very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. I am Duduzile Vetboy, and we are going to be doing the National Account Aggregator. Right, before we get to the definition of what the National Account Aggregates are, I am going to go with you through the some of the terminologies that we are going to be focusing on in today's lesson. Right, the first one is going to be the basic prices. Now, when you speak about basic prices, these are the prices that are going to include taxes on production and exclude subsidies on production. However, I will be explaining this at a later stage. And then we are also going to be focusing on GDP, which is gross domestic product. And this is the total value of the final goods and services that are produced within the boundaries of a country. And this means that this value is going to include the final products that are produced within the borders of a country by either the permanent residents or the non-citizens of that particular country. And then when you go to the next terminology here is going to be gross national product. Now, when you speak about gross national product, we are mainly referring to the total market value of all the final goods and services that are produced by the permanent residents. Now, this particular terminology simply may refer to the goods and services that are produced within the borders or outside the borders of a country within a specific period of time, of course. And then we also come to what you call the expenditure method. Now, with the expenditure method, this method mainly focuses on GDP at market prices, or rather calculating GDP at market prices by adding spending by all the main participants, or rather the economic units. And then now we come to what you call the income method. And this method is going to be providing us with the value of the income that is going to be the value of the income that is going to be received by the four that is going to be received by the 4 factors of production. And then we come now to the market price. Now, when you speak about the market price, this is going to be the price of goods and services that is going to be paid by consumers, meaning that taxes and subsidies would have been included in this particular market price. Now we go to the next slide. Now in the next slide, we found certain terminologies as well that will be important in today's lesson. The first one there that we come across, it's going to be subsidies on production. Now, with subsidies on production, we refer to the subsidies that are not linked to specific goods and or services. It could be an example of what? Of subsidies on employment. And then when you come to subsidies, remember I said on production, and now we're speaking about subsidies on products. Now, these subsidies on products are linked now to the value of a specific good or a service. Now, when we come to taxes, we know that taxes are going to be compulsory payments that are made to who? To the government by different economic units, meaning the households, businesses, as well as what? The foreign sector, if it's, of course, in an open economy. Right, now when you come to the next terminology here, we find taxes on production first. Now with the taxes on production, these are taxes that are not linked to specific goods or services, meaning these are the taxes that will be paid on, or rather the taxes that will be levied on what? On buildings, on land, etc. And then when you speak about the taxes on products, with the taxes on products, these are going to be the taxes that will be linked to specific goods or services. And a very typical example of this particular tax is going to be your value added tax that is paid by us as consumers. And I think we are all aware that our value added tax has now moved from 14% to 15% of the value of that particular product. Right, now the next method that I'm going to be highlighting on right now is going to be the production method. Now with the production method, this is where we are going to be determining the gross domestic product by adding the value of what? Of each stage of the production, which is of course now the primary sector, secondary sector, as well as the tertiary sector. I will be alluding to those at the later stage. Now, I did say that I was going to come back and explain when we're talking about national account aggregates, what is it that we're talking about? Remember that Mufokeng did mention the fact that you guys have been doing this from grade 10, and then some of the information was added to you in grade 11, and therefore in grade 12 we move it a bit a level higher now. Now, the national account aggregates are going to be defined as they are going to be defined as the following. They are part of macroeconomics, and they consist of accounting records of the country's total production, the country's income, as well as the expenditure. Now, these national account aggregates are calculated by using the circular flow model. Now, we can bring to the circular flow model to life by translating the illustrated flows into real amounts and the amounts that we find in our national accounts. Remember, in our circular flow model, we did mention that we have real flows and money flows. Now, in this case, I'm referring to the money flows. Now, when we speak about these national account aggregates, they are prepared by the South African Reserve Bank, and they are published by the South African Reserve Bank in their website, which is www.resbank.co.za. And then we say also that these estimates are generally presented in line with the classifications and definitions recommended by the United Nations System of National Accounts, which is the SNA. And then we have 3 economic processes that represent the method of calculating GDP and the main national accounts. And these particular methods are going to be 1, the production method, which focuses on GDP. Remember, we said that GDP is going to be the total market value of the final goods and services that are produced within the boundaries. And this production may take into account production of the goods and services that are produced by either the citizens of that particular country or the non-citizens, meaning the foreign nationals. Now we move also to what? To what you call the income method. Now with the income method, we refer to what you call the gross domestic income. Now with the gross domestic income, this gross domestic income provides us with the measure of the income that has been received by the four factors of production. Now, the next one is going to be the expenditure method. Now, with the expenditure method, it refers to gross domestic expenditure, which is going to focus on the value of the expenditure by the four economic units, which is the consumers, which is the government, investment, as well as what? As well as the foreign sector. I will be explaining when I get to this particular method. Right. Now, we focus now on the uses of our national accounts. Firstly, we say that the national accounts are going to be useful in indicating economic activity, whether there is economic activity within a country or not. And then secondly, we use these national accounts to measure economic growth from one year to the next, meaning in an annual basis. Right. And then also, these national accounts are also used to determine the standard of living in a country, and then also to compare prosperity levels among the country. Right. Now, I want us to look at this particular table. Remember, I spoke about basic prices. Now, when you look at this particular table, you see that we have the expenditure method, the production method, as well as the longer one, which is now the income method, right? I will be alluding to them. However, I just want to make you aware of something right now, that with the production method, if you look there, we have value added by primary sector, secondary, value added by tertiary sector, and then we have now GDP at basic prices, right? And then I also want to make you aware that with the income method, we have the compensation of employees, we have consumption of fixed capital, net operating surplus, GDP at factor cost, and then we add taxes on production minus subsidies on production, and therefore we get our GDP. Therefore, we get our GDP at basic prices. Now, what I want to make you aware of is the fact that when you speak about your GDP at basic prices, they are not calculated the same in the two methods. Of course, in the expenditure method, we do not have GDP at basic prices. Now, with our production method, you only get GDP at basic prices once you have added the value of your primary sector, your secondary sector, as well as your tertiary sector. That is how you get your GDP at basic prices. Now, with the income method, it is not going to be the same method that you are going to use to get your GDP at basic prices. Now, with the income method, we can just skip the compensation, consumption, and then just go straight to what? To GDP at factor cost. We say that once you have your GDP at factor cost, you add taxes on production, and then you subtract your subsidies and production. And that is how you are going to get your GDP at basic prices. Please do not confuse the two. Right. Now we come to our expenditure method here. Now, with the expenditure method, the components that are available there are going to be the following. We have consumption expenditure by households, which is normally elaborated by using letter C, which is consumption expenditure by households simply refers to what? Simply refers to the money, or rather the value of the the money that is going to be used by households to purchase goods and services. And then when it comes to gross capital formation, you see here it's an I. Now remember that I represents investment. So this is going to be the value of all the investment by what? By any of the economic units, especially here, especially the business sector, right? And then now we come to consumption expenditure by the general government. Good people, now with the consumption expenditure by the government, this could be the goods and services that the government that the government purchases to satisfy our individual needs, or it could be the goods and services that the government use to satisfy our collective needs. Therefore, all these are going to form part of what? Of consumption expenditure by the government. And then we also have what you call gross domestic expenditure. I did explain it to say that this is going to be the value of the money that is spent on goods and services. Now you get that after combining the three, right? And then we say here plus the value of exports. Now we know that exports represented by letter X, they are going to refer to what? To the goods and services that we are going to be doing what? That we are going to be selling to other countries. Hence, the value is a positive one. That is why we add, because exports, we know that they are an injection into the economy, right? And then we minus imports, which is represented by letter M, because we understand that when we import, it is when we sell goods and services to other countries. Therefore, it means that we are leaking money from our economy. That is why we find that we say less or subtract or minus imports, or rather the value of imports. And therefore, we are going to find there now the expenditure on GDP at market prices. Now, good people, in the previous slide, you will realize that there is one particular value that I did not include. Now, this is the value, or rather the component, the residual item. Now, when you speak about the residual items, it is going to comprise, sometimes when additions are being made, because human error does happen at sometime, you find that maybe, let me make an example to say that there is a value of C which was not included, right? Which was not included in calculating what? In calculating our gross domestic product, gross domestic expenditure. Then that is where the residual item is going to come in. If they realize at a later stage that our values do not tally together because we failed to include a certain value, the value will not be added under C, which is consumption expenditure by households. Rather, it will be added under what? Under residual item, meaning that it is going to be, the residual item is going to be the value that was omitted when the calculations was made in the first place, right? And then we come to what? We adding the export of goods and services, and then import of goods and services are being subtracted. I did allude to this. Now, can we please go to the next slide? Now, with the next slide, we are going to be now looking at the conversion of domestic figures to national figures. Now, we look at how do we convert let me do this. Thank you. Like, we are going to look at how do we convert GDP at market prices to what? To GNI at market prices. Now, in order for us to go from GDP at market prices to gross national income at market prices, we are going to add here. We are going to add factor income that is earned abroad by South Africans, and then we are going to say subtract factor income that is earned in South Africa. Now, this factor income that is earned abroad by South Africans, it could be an example of maybe me going to China, for example, to offer my teaching services, and then the income that I would have gotten from China is going to be added into this particular figure. Now, when you say less factor income that is earned in South Africa, it would mean that this one can be by permanent residents, or non-residents of our particular country. So the income that they would have and from the factors of production that they use, it's going to be minus or rather subtracted from this value in order for us to get our gross national income at market prices. Therefore, for you also to go from GNI at market prices to GDP at market prices, you will just say this time, you say plus this value of factor income earned in South Africa, and then you minus factor income earned abroad by South Africans. That's how you do it. Now I'm going to be moving to the production method, or rather the output value added method. Now the method, like I indicated, that it takes place in the primary sector, the secondary sector, as well as the tertiary sector. However, we cannot merely add up all the market values of outputs of all participants. Why? Because we are trying to avoid what we call double counting. Therefore, in order for us to get our GDP using the production method, we are going to need to not include, or rather to exclude, what you call the value of the intermediate goods. Now, good people, remember that the intermediate goods are going to be the goods that are used. They are the semi-final goods, or rather the goods that are used in the production of other goods. And then now we come to the components of our production method. Right. Now the first one is going to be the value that is added by the primary sector. Now with the value that is added by the primary sector, when we talk about the primary sector, we know that the primary sector is concerned with the extraction of our raw materials. This could be our mining sector, agriculture, fishing industry, etc. Now when we speak about the secondary sector, we speak now about what? The manufacturers. The sector that is going to be dealing with the manufacturing of our final goods and services, services, only our final goods or our final product. Why do we exclude the services? It is because the services are being dealt with in our tertiary sector. Now, having added all these three, the value of our primary sector, secondary, and the tertiary sector, it is then whereby we find now our GDP at basic prices. Right. Now, remember I said with the production method, the GDP at basic prices does not include our taxes and subsidies. Now, when you speak about the taxes on products, I did mention the taxes on products, but let me just quickly add the fact that our taxes on products are going to be focusing mainly on the taxes. When you say products, then you must know that these are the taxes that will be paid by who? By the consumers, right? And then we are going to say, once again, less subsidies on products. Now, with the subsidies on products, I can make an example of the subsidies on brown bread, which is levied on the government to ensure that brown bread is cheaper, so that we are able to do what? To purchase more of it for health reasons. Right, and then after we have subtracted our subsidies on products, that is where we are going to find our GDP at market prices. Now remember, at market prices, I said a market price is going to be the price that is found on the shelves when we buy our goods and services. Right, and then now we come to what? I've already alluded to this. This is only another way that is showing us how to the method that is used to calculate what? The production method. If you look at this, it still repeats the same thing that I spoke about: primary sector plus secondary sector plus our tertiary sector. And then here they change, they don't say GDP, but rather they say GVA at basic prices, which is gross value added. It is still one and the same thing. It depends only on the kind of textbook that you use. And then now, after getting our GVA at basic price, we add tax minus subsidies, we still get our GDP at market prices. Right. And then we come now to the income method. Now remember we spoke about the income method, and then I said to you that the income method is going to address what you call the GDI, which is gross domestic income. And then I said to you that the gross domestic income is going to be focusing, or rather it gives us the value of what? Of the income that is earned by the factors of production. Right. Now the method that is used to calculate income, or rather GDI, is going to be as follows. We have compensation of employees. Let me just quickly go to the method. I'll get to the concept thereafter. We have compensation of employees plus net operating surplus plus consumption of fixed capital, and then we get what? Gross value added at factor cost. Now, after this, we are not done calculating our income, our GDI. Now we are still going to have to add other taxes on production, and then we minus other subsidies on production, and then we get our gross value added at basic prices. Now after this, we are still not done. This is just one of the subtotals. Now for us to get to our GDI, it means that after getting our GVA at basic prices, we still have to go and add what? Taxes on products, and then we also add what? We don't add, but rather we subtract subsidies on products, and therefore our final answer is going to be this one, whereby we get now our GDP at market prices, or you can call it the gross domestic income. Now, good people, let me just try and explain some of the concepts that are new to us here. Now, when you speak about the compensation of employees, we are mainly referring to what? To the gross wages and salaries of employees, right? Because it does say that it's compensation of employees, meaning this is the income that you would have gotten after rendering your labor services as an employee, right? And then when you talk about the net operating surplus, usually the net operating surplus in very simple terms is going to refer to profit. Now, profit, we know that we get profit once we have said revenue that we get from the sale of our goods and services minus all the costs that are associated. I will be alluding to this at a later stage once again. Now, we also have what you call the consumption of fixed capital. Now, with the consumption of fixed capital, remember, good people, that when we use our fixed capital, at times they lose value, right? Even a very simple example that I can make from your household. When you do your landscaping, right, you know that, or let me just, in your kitchen, the knife that you use to peel your veggies, we know that after some time, it is going to need some maintenance because it would not cut the same way as it was new. So when we say that they lose their value, it means that our fixed capital does not, or rather is not able to perform its duties in the production process as it used to before. So now this value is going to be added as consumption of fixed capital. Now after adding our consumption of fixed capital, we get our gross value added at factor cost. Now when we talk about factor cost, we are talking about the cost of the factors of production. If you look at these three, I said this one. Now, if you look at these three, I said this one is going to be compensation of employees. Remember, employees are compensated for the labor, which is a factor of production. Profit is gotten by what? By who? By under our factors of production. We know that we get profit as an entrepreneur, right? And then with consumption of fixed capital can form part of what? Or rather, we get this when we talk about investment. Right? Now, that is why I'm saying to you that factor cost is going to be the cost of the factors of production. And then we go to other taxes on production. Now, remember that I said that with other taxes on production, these are going to be the taxes that will be levied on the production process, meaning they will affect who? The producer and not the consumer. Now, also with the subsidies on production, we also refer here to what? To the subsidies that the government will probably give to who? To the producer and not the consumer, to make the cost of production lesser. Now, I did make an example to say that under taxes on production, we may look at taxes on employment or subsidies on employment, right? And then we did speak about the basic prices. I explained that. Now with taxes on products, remember I said that these are the taxes that will be levied on who? On the consumer, right? Because these are linked to the specific product that we will be purchasing at a particular price, right? And then now with subsidies on products, these also benefit who? The consumer rather than the producer. Because now we make an example of what? Subsidies maybe on what? On imports and exports. This can be an example of subsidies on products, sorry. Now I want us now to quickly move to our next slide. I did explain compensation of employees, net operating surplus. I just want to highlight something from this. Now, with our net operating surplus, we say that it includes the value of the goods and services that are produced minus the cost. Now, this value is going to be what? Our revenue that I spoke about in the at an earlier stage. Now, the cost has got three elements. This is what I wanted to come to. Now, the three elements that I'm talking about is going to be one, the cost of intermediate goods and services. Remember I said that our intermediate goods are the goods that are used in the production process, or we can also call them the semi-final goods. Now, these costs are going to be minus, or they are going to be subtracted from what? From the revenue that we would have gotten, right? And then we come to what? To the cost of remuneration of employees. This is going to be the cost of what? Of the salaries and wages that are used to pay what? To pay who? To pay the employees, right? And then we come to another cost, which is the cost of consumption of fixed capital, the maintenance of our fixed capital that would have lost its value in the production process, right? Now, it says here that the net operating surplus shows profit and surpluses before taxes or before taxation, right? So this is going to bring us to the end of our national income aggregates for today. However, before I leave here, I just want to quickly emphasize something. Remember that it is important for you not only to know the theory in terms of the national account aggregates. You must also ensure that you understand the different methods that are used to calculate these national account aggregates, and also how to convert different I just quickly want to show you something in terms of the conversions. Also, how to convert different basic prices, factor cost, etc. For example, if you want, let's say, to convert factor cost to basic prices, you are going to say plus taxes on production minus subsidies on production, and then you get your basic prices. Now, for you to go back from basic prices to factor cost, you are going to say basic prices now plus other subsidies on production, and then you say minus other taxes on production. That is when you go back up. And then now, for you to get from basic prices to market prices, you say plus taxes on products minus subsidies on products. Also, when you want to go up from market prices to basic, then you're going to say market prices plus subsidies on products minus taxes on products, and then you get your basic prices. Also, if you want to go from factor cost to market prices, you are going to be using the very same method, but however, this is longer because you have to get to basic prices and then continue up until here. Now, also for you to get from market prices to factor cost, it means that you are going to change these signs. A positive will be a negative and negative will be a positive, meaning you say market prices plus subsidies on products minus taxes on products. Then you get your basic prices, and then you continue once again and say plus other subsidies on production minus other taxes on production, and then you will get your factor cost. Now, good people, this brings us now to the end of our lesson today. I am going to hand over to Mrs. Mofokeng, but that is only after a few minutes break, which will be indicated to you. Now she will come back to you and drill the questions that are related to this particular content. Thank you so much for watching.
Welcome back to the economics class. Remember, after every teaching, there must be assessment. So my role now is to take you to different types of questions that are asked in economics. So always learn to go through different types of questions after you have been taught a certain particular topic so that you can check if you have understood what was taught and what was learned. Remember to use our WhatsApp to send questions. That is 064-748-8913. Do not call us, but only send the questions. Let us firstly look at this type of a question. This is called what? Multiple choice. So if you are given a multiple choice question, make sure that you make one choice. Out of this options, we have option A, B, C, and D. Out of the 4 options, 1 is correct. Never, never, never leave a blank space. Make a choice. And you're not allowed to make a choice like you say A or D. You are guessing, so you won't get marks. So let us look at this particular question. Consumption of fixed capital is used to calculate GDP at what? You are given basic prices, you are given market prices, you are given selling prices and factor cost. So Ma'am Vetboy took you through the 3 methods of calculating GDP. So where you are seated, you know the answer. So the answer is number D, at factor cost. So this is your answer. Clearly, you can even see that this particular, where you see the word consumption of fixed capital, this is the income method that you did with Ma'am Vetboy. Let me take you through another question. Okay. In the previous lessons, you learned about injections. You also learned about leakages. So the question here, a leakage. The question here is that when I plus G plus X is greater than S plus T plus M, the level of national income will do what? Will it rise? Will it fall? Will it remain the same? Or will it fluctuate? Obviously, if injections are more, investment is more, government spending is more, we are exporting more, the level of national income will do what? It will rise. Your A will be the correct option. Let's move to another question related to what you learned today. Taxes and subsidies on what? We don't know. On what? Are considered when calculating GDP at basic prices. So the obvious and possible answer here is B. So when we calculate GDP at basic prices, Ma'am Vetboy taught you that taxes on production will be added. Subsidies on production will be subtracted, and we will derive GDP at basic price. So this makes number B to be the correct answer. So let's move to short questions. Multiple choice is a short question. Let's move to another type of a short question. For 2 marks, we call them middle order questions. For 2 marks. The question can be identified with how, what does, why does. So this one is, it starts with a how, the word how. How will the scenario I plus G plus X, which is injections, greater than S plus T plus M, which are leakages, how will this affect national income? Obviously, you saw this question in the multiple choice. So if our injections are high, obviously national income will rise because injections are higher. But you write this in a full sentence. Don't write that it will rise or it will increase. Write it in a full sentence and elaborate. It will rise because this is an elaboration. Okay, so let us look at the next question. What effect does taxes and subsidies have on the calculation of basic prices? So this helps us to convert basic prices to GDP at product and market prices. Okay, that's for 2 marks. We're still on the short questions. Why does South Africa prescribe to the system of national account as stipulated by the International Monetary Fund? In the beginning of the topic of circular flow, in the previous lesson, we mentioned that South Africa is using an open economy. So if we are doing business with other countries, we will be measured against international standards. So even when we submit data related to GDP, it should be the one that it can also be used internationally. So when you respond, you will say South Africa must comply with international best practices in terms of the provision of national accounts data. Remember, this data of national accounts can also be used to compare the prosperity of South Africa in terms of the prosperity of other countries. So for comparison, that is important. Let us also look at another short question for middle order. The question is, what is the purpose of residual item when the expenditure method is used to calculate national income? I heard that Mem Vetboy again explained to you that when we use the expenditure method, somewhere we need to cater for residual item. So you also need to know its purpose. You can be asked for 2 marks. So the residual item takes into account errors and omissions. Sometimes when you deal with figures, you make errors. You even omit certain figures, not deliberately. So we will use the residual item so that it is a balancing item in the GDP and GDI equation. That again will be 2 marks. Let us look at the last one before we move to other types of question. This is still a short question for middle order. What is the main purpose of subsidies on production? Remember, the government can subsidize the production of a particular product. If, for example, petrol price is very expensive and it is so costly for the producers to produce it, the government can subsidize the production of petrol to make it cheaper for the businesses to produce. So the purpose should be that it will reduce the cost of production. Remember, who is subsidized? The producer. So the cost of producing that item like petrol should be less, not expensive. That's 2 marks. Or subsidies on production can be used for the purpose of encouraging what? Goods to be exported, encouraging South African firms to produce goods for the international markets. Or you can mention that subsidies will even benefit the consumer because it increased the production of certain goods, whereby you find that the businesses were unable to produce more. So the government will subsidize and the businesses will be able to produce more of this product and the consumers will benefit. Only for 2 marks. So I want us to move quickly. Let's move quickly to other questions. Okay, I will select them for you because of time factor. The question can be, differentiate between subsidies on production and subsidies on products for 8 marks. This type of questions, we call them what? Paragraph. We call them paragraph questions of middle order. Okay, the answers can come from your textbook, from what you learned previously with Mem Vetboy. Because it is differentiate between subsidies on production, you should give us 2 points for that, and then 2 points for subsidies on production. So it will be 2 times 4 equals to 8. Let's quickly look at subsidies on production. You need to describe what that is for you to qualify for a 2 mark. A production subsidy is a payment made by a government to firms in an industry based on the output of production. It is a sort of grant that the government will give to a business. Okay, remember, to lower the cost of production. So subsidies on production is used to stimulate output for a good due to its strategic importance. Another 2 mark. Still on that one, you can even give us an example to say employment subsidy, whereby the government wants to stop retrenchment of workers to encourage job creation. The government can offer employment subsidies. That you can also add. The answers are not limited to what I've mentioned. So you will get your 2 marks for each bullet, but only 2 bullets. Then let's look at subsidies on production. You need to also explain what it is so that you can get your 2 marks. So subsidy of products are subsidies payable per unit of a good or service produced or imported. You find that the government, for example, is subsidizing the bread as a unit, so that bread as a product, so that bread can become affordable to the consumers. 2 marks for that. A subsidy on a product usually becomes payable when the good is produced or sold or even imported. Who pays for that? Us, the consumers. Who receive that subsidy? It's us, even though it is indirect. The subsidy may be specific amount of money per unit, but remember, you won't get 6 marks because you gave us 3 points. You should give us 2 points for you to qualify for 4 marks. And then for subsidies on production, you'll give us 2 points, and you will also qualify for 4 points. So it will be 8. I want to select one higher order question or 2, then we move to data response question due to time factor. How is expenditure related to income and production? One learner asked me via WhatsApp to say, what is a higher order question? Higher order question is a question whereby you don't have to reproduce what is in the textbook. You can apply your critical thinking skills and even elaborate, link the theory that you learned to the real situation. So the answer doesn't mean that it must come necessarily from the textbook. So it can be even in the form of examine, analyze, evaluate, how is, why is, what does. Those type of questions, they are higher order. So let us look at a question here. It says, how is expenditure related to income and production? It can start with a government expenditure, where the government, for example, is involved in a big infrastructure of constructing bus lanes in the major cities of Pretoria and Johannesburg. That is an expenditure. The government is constructing bus lanes. So this project will require additional workers who will be employed. Those workers will earn an income. Can you see that I've already linked the expenditure to the income? Yes, you can see that. Again, these individuals now have income. What will they do with the income? They will purchase goods and services. And this is what, again, it's expenditure. This will stimulate the demand for goods and services, which will lead to what? Production. As they receive more income, they will need what? To buy goods. As they are demanding more goods, this will lead to what? To more production of goods and services. So production will definitely increase. This is how you should link it. So these employees will also add to greater demand, which will increase level of production, which in turn will increase level of employment and income, stimulating consumer demand. All for 8 marks. So let's quickly look at a data response question. Okay, I want to show you what is a data response question, which is related directly to what you did with MEM. You can be given this. That's why we call it data response question. You can be given a table, a cartoon, or a case study. In this table, you are given national income figures for the year 2018 and for the year 2019, and there will be questions. The first question will be an easy question, and that is where you must get it right. Even the second question will be an easy question. The question is, what method of calculation was used in the table above to calculate the gross domestic product? Let me give you a hint. Let me give you a hint. I want to give you a hint. I'm going back to the table. I'm reversing. By just looking at this table, you see it's written National Income Account of South Africa. Obviously, this income is giving you a hint that the method that is used is the income method. But don't rely on that. Sometimes it can be removed. Look at the compensation of employees. This is an income to the workers. Look at net operating surplus, the profit that the businesses receive after payment of tax. Look at consumption of fixed capital. All these three items should give you a hint to say this is the income method. Okay. That is 1 mark because you didn't have to think. The other question says, name the missing item labeled A. Let's go back. Let's reverse. Let's go back to the table. Let's go back to the table. Where is it? The A. After the 3 items, we have gross value added at factor cost. We subtract taxes on production. We have less subsidies on production. Obviously, the answer is what? GDP at basic prices. It's GDP at basic prices because that also, remember, when you start subtracting subsidies on production and you are adding taxes on production, you know that that is used to derive GDP at basic prices. Let's go back. It's 1 mark. You didn't think. It's only 1 mark. You didn't have to think. It's an easy question. Easy. Okay, let's go to another question. Is it going to be easy? No. This question, we call it what? A moderate question. It's not easy, but it's moderate. Not difficult, not easy. So you are asked to briefly describe the term net operating surplus. Because of the action verb, briefly describe, you don't have to reproduce the definition as it appears in the textbook. You can explain it in your own words. So what is the net operating surplus? It is the after-tax surplus of the remuneration of the factors of production. Like I mentioned that it is the after-tax surplus after the businesses, they have made their profit, but after they have paid tax, this is what they will be left with. We have subtracted. You see the word net, it means something was subtracted. In this case, tax was subtracted for the business to end up having what? Surplus profit. That is 2 marks. Why was the subsidies on products in 2019 less than subsidies on products in 2018? Obviously, this means the government, when the government subsidizes a product, it's not permanently that all these years the government will keep on subsidizing this product. The government can cut its expenditure. When the government cuts expenditure, the government can reduce the amount of subsidies that is offering for certain products. So the reason for subsidies to be less in 2019, it could have been because the government has reduced the number of subsidies per unit on the goods. 2 marks. This one, because it's moderate and it's 2 marks, you must answer it in a full sentence. Let's move to another one. Calculate the compensation of employees as a percentage of GDP at market price in 2019. Let's go to 2019. You calculating the compensation. Where is the compensation? This is the compensation, 2,418,544. And then you have to make this figure be a percentage. Surely in mathematics or mathematical literacy, they have shown you to convert raw figures. This is a raw figure. They have shown you how to convert it into a percentage. You're going to use this figure to divide it with GDP at market price for 2019, this 5,077,625. You will divide 2418544 with 5,077,625. You divide and you multiply by 100/1. Then you will get your answer. The reason why we are saying that you need to show all your calculations is because for the division part, you'll get only 1 mark. And for multiplying with 100/1, you'll get another mark. And for giving us the answer, correct answer, you'll get 2 marks. But if you give us the answer only, you don't show us all the steps, you will get what? You will only get 2 marks. So make sure that you don't forfeit marks. You do what? You show us the steps and the calculations. So we have different types. We also have one example here of a data response. This type, you can be asked for question 1, for example, as an easy one. Which method was used? Memvedboy taught you that where you see primary sector, secondary sector, tertiary sector, then you know that this is a production method or value added or GDP in bracket P. So which year is currently used by the South African Reserve Bank as a base year? Currently, the South African Reserve Bank is using 2015. We are no longer using 2010 as a base year. So they say calculate gross value at A. When you calculate gross value at A, let's go back. I'm revising. I'm reversing. Sorry, I like reversing. I'm reversing. I want to show you that calculations are important in economics. That is when you go into add for 2019, primary sector, you add it to secondary sector, you add it to tertiary sector, and you will get your answer. Okay, so you show us all the steps. Okay, this is how it was done. This is how it was done. But because it wasn't indicated that you must show all the calculation, you will get only, even if you give us only this answer, it's fine. But usually we emphasize that don't lose marks and show us all the calculations. Then this last question is a difficult, we call it a difficult question because it is for 4 marks. It says, what happened to the value added by primary sector between 2018 and 2019? Sorry, this is moderate. It's 2 marks. It's 2 marks. What happened? There was a decline. There was a decline from 30787 to 29143. You simply go back to primary sector at 2018. You look at the figure and compare it with the 2019 figure. You subtract. And you can even show us that what the decline was. In this case, the decline was 16,732 million. So the last one, this is the one that I wanted to say is difficult. What is the difference between constant and current prices? So with current prices, it measures GDP using actual prices we are using in the economy. It is nominal GDP. We use current prices that we are using in this particular year. So while constant prices adjust for effects of inflation. So when you look at constant prices, it takes into consideration that there was inflation or the prices changed. So usually we call it that it is a real GDP because it takes into account those other issues. So it's 4 marks. So it's important for you to familiarize yourself with the types of questions that are asked in economics. So as I'm wrapping this particular session, I want to say to you, thank you for watching this particular session. And also please to remember the following. Remember to sanitize grade 12 learners. Remember to wear your mask. Remember to keep a social distance. And we thank you.